It's time to learn about another very important document in the adult training, the vocational and education training world. So we're looking now at the final assessment record. So we're going to continue on with that case study of Susan, and what we have to do, the mapping that we did before for her recognition of prior learning in Make a Presentation unit, we need to create an assessment record of that. So I will show you an earlier sample of an Evoke training assessment record, and your RTO obviously will have their own types of designs on this, but it's also to show you how all of this functions, and you will need to complete this and follow these instructions, saving as you go, so we can mark that that piece of product that you've just created is satisfactory over here. So double click on to begin with. That of course opens it in a new window, and we'll just maximise the size of that. So in any assessment record, it will have to give reference to the unit descriptors. So we've got the code and the unit descriptors here, and make sure that that is the current coding. So this would go into some template that your RTO has for their assessment report. You then type in the candidate's name, so you'll need to type in Susan Jones, and then you'll need to type in your name. And you won't need a supervising assessor actually, because now under the current legislation, once you're a qualified trainer and assessor in Cert 4, like what you'll be doing now, you wouldn't require supervision. So that wouldn't be necessary in this case. So for our auditing purposes, we've culminated a lot of different documentation into the one document. So our assessment report contains our assessment plan, the mapping, you've just completed the mapping, the assessment tools, the report, which I guess is the overall document here, and feedback to the learner. So we've ticked off that this document will satisfy all of those requirements. So you can see here the assessment plan is the first thing, and that's what we move into now in our assessment report. So the assessment plan contains the purpose in order to meet the client needs. So we tick or we highlight the boxes that apply. So I'll just change that for your benefit there. Okay, so you need to select recognise a current existing competence. That's the purpose of this assessment. We're doing a recognition of prior learning. So we're recognising a current competence with Susan being a teacher for the Make a Presentation unit. So we're not establishing if competence is achieved following learning. That would be if you've put someone through the course and you're assessing them at the end. It might be like a little formative assessment where you're checking their progress. Some courses, say like business admin, you might have a trainee, they're doing a Certificate 3 in business admin at a workplace, and you're the trainer, and you're constantly checking on their growing competence perhaps over a 6-month period. So it might be just seeing how the candidate's progressing. Obviously it's not in Susan's case, but just explaining all the different purposes of assessment for you. This would be the one we'd select for John, determine language, literacy and numeracy needs perhaps. But that isn't the case for Susan, who's already a university graduate there. And of course we would be selecting for her certify competence. In this case we'd be looking at giving her a statement of attainment, because it's only one unit of competency. It's not the 10 that makes up the full qualification. Or it might be to meet a licensing need. So if John was to go ahead and get his forklift license, we might then be selecting that one there for John. Or it could be for another reason, and you can type that in. So what I need you to do is highlight this one and this one for the purpose of Susan's assessment. This again, we're continuing with. This is part of the documentation that's outlining the assessment plan. Now the context is not going to be in the workplace, because remember Susan is e-learning from home, and you would just highlight here, come into home, hit your little highlighter icon, and hit yellow. Workplace not available, it's a simulation. Okay, and then you would just type in, you know, make up a high school name if you like for Susan. So if there is a supervising assessor, leave them in. If there's not, you would just take that out. If you see how stakeholders notified would be the candidate, well, obviously you need to notify the candidate of the assessment. But if Susan's workplace, say she worked for Brisbane High School, and they had actually paid for her training, another stakeholder then would be her manager at Brisbane High School, because sometimes the client is actually the employer, all right? But in Susan's case, she enrolled privately, so she's the only one that's entitled to learn of her outcomes. If it was an employer paying, yes, they would be entitled to receive updates on her progress or whether she's, you know, satisfactorily providing evidence. So continuing on with the assessment plan, we get into the assessment methods, and we're selecting this, and this is something that we discuss with Susan before the assessment takes place, this assessment plan, and make sure that we're on the same page, that we are meeting her needs. So obviously if she's e-learning from a remote location, we can't conduct any direct observation. Any structured activities makes it a little bit difficult. This is a recognition of prior learning anyway, so there isn't going to be structured activities here. Questioning, we will conduct some interviews with her over the telephone, so you might want to add more information. That's the beauty of these electronic forms. And the products, so I would be highlighting in her case a collection of work samples. And, you know, we're hoping to collect some PowerPoint products from her. And another review of the products is her current teacher's registration and qualifications, and that's the main documents for Make a Presentation that is going to give her the direct credit. So scrolling down, this is the part where you insert the mapping, all right? And this is mapping that ASQA needs. If ASQA was doing an audit of your registered training organisation, you as the trainer and assessor needs to make sure your RTO's documents are completed effectively, and they should be conducting random moderations of all of your work to make sure that you understand their process fully and nothing's being left to catch them out at an audit. So what I want you to do here is you can see I'll just sort of go back into the main module so you can see we're inside that assessment record right now. That mapping document that you created, let's see if it'll just copy this way. Right click, copy, and then move back into your document within. Let's see, Control V. Oh, that seems to have worked. So any work that you've done, you can just copy and paste directly into that. And then I would hit save to save your work along the way there. Once you get out of one particular document, it doesn't automatically save. So we're just double checking. We've agreed with Susan for her recognition of prior learning on the agreed evidence that she's submitting, and she's agreeing because it's something that she can easily lay her hands on. It's not causing a lot of headaches for her to be chasing up employers from 5 years ago or someone from 12 months ago that she had a bit of an awkward termination with or anything. You know, we've got to get evidence that's fairly reasonably accessible without causing too much awkwardness, really, when we're talking about workplace evidence. And, you know, you're also perhaps checking with the employer as well that they're happy for their work product to be shared with you as an assessor. And obviously, you know, there's codes of ethics there that that you would keep that privacy and confidentiality and not share innovations with other companies. So yeah, we've been able to embed her PowerPoint samples there and her certifications. So now we're just going to quickly check on that. That's all been provided for you. This is just a sample of her 100 points of ID. We've got her qualifications, Bachelor of Education, and you can see that it has been all authenticated by a Justice of the Peace there on the right-hand side. That normally would contain the photo ID, and you've been able to verify that against her unique student identifier number. When you go into that website, you'll see her driver's license, and Susan Jones is actually Susan Jones. So again, we're making sure that these submissions are authentic, and the statement of attainment that's going to be issued is going to be issued to the correct person. So there is her Queensland College of Teachers registration. I've just put sample all over these because, I've actually doctored genuine candidates' work, and because of confidentiality, I've certainly clouded over particular information there, but you would be getting the real thing. So that's you. You've just been able to authenticate that they've all been JP authenticated. You've verified that the information is correct, and we can just close out of there. Okay, so you could then write, I'd do that in blue. Yep, so you've found her information there satisfactory. You've opened up her work product, and you can see here, yep, it was her that created it. You might want to ask her, just to make sure it is an authentic product that she created, you might want to ask 1 or 2 questions in your recognition of prior learning interview, what this was about, and you can very quickly start to gauge the genuineness of her creating it. It's totally fine if she created it as part of a team. Quite often in the workplace, things aren't individual. It's no less authentic so long as you've had a genuine input in the production of the piece of work product. So, yep, we're happy with that. We'll be able to just copy and paste because we're lazy. Copy, Control V. So that was satisfactory evidence. And then finally, that last part there was the assessment decision. So we've found, because of that mapping that you have gone back and put in, remember from the previous one, and we saw that was mostly done for you. Qualifications and teacher registration. As long as we've got some product and some questions there, yep, we can see holistically now that there's sufficient evidence. You've already done your mapping, you've made sure that it's met the unit requirements, required knowledge, etc. So that's all fine. Satisfactory there, Control V. We've checked her portfolio of evidence. Sorry for scrolling in front of you there. And so now we can deem her competent. All right, you've made that assessment judgment. When we're back in the assessment tools, when we're looking at each piece of evidence, that's when you're using satisfactory or not yet satisfactory. If there was any feedback given, so say for example she wasn't yet competent, that you required a bit more evidence to make it more holistic, you would just hamburger that. And when I say hamburger, that we'll learn more about that in Module 3, but you start off with a soft, sweet bun. So you start off with something light and positive, and then you go into the more nutritious meat and veggies of your feedback. And then you would end again with the soft sweet bun at the bottom. So you would always end on a positive note. So say for example she wasn't yet competent, you would start the soft sweet bun something like you have provided So maybe we didn't quite get enough information of her working with, you know, primary school grade 3 children to ascertain if her presentations were effective. So she didn't meet that that knowledge requirement for this unit. So please provide more information on how you collect data to is effective. Overall, a strong submission. Okay, so soft sweet bun at first, congratulating her on the strengths of her submission. Then we go into the meat and veggies. This was the gap. This is obviously if she's not yet competent. Okay, and we look forward to your resubmission. So you can see that that evidence is there in written form. And it is best if you could then, the actual evidence you've written in there, you could copy that and paste that in a normal real situation directly into an email. So you've got a solid record of the feedback that you gave. If there's a grievance issue, if she follows that appeals process and complains to your registered training organisation that she believes her teacher's registration is sufficient enough for make a presentation and they investigate that, well, you have a very solid record of the professionalism you've taken in giving that feedback back, and that just might be a conversation that you and the RTO have. You might speak with other assessors, and that's part of this continual quality assurance, this validation process of speaking with other assessors for the RTO and them saying, oh, look, as soon as I see her teacher's registration, I'm happy with that. We just automatically give it for you know, make a presentation, and that's passed an ASQA audit in the past. So, you know, you as the new assessor there, you really should take advantage of a supervisionary stage where you can just be touching base with other assessors of the company and checking. So, yeah, so at least your feedback is all recorded and you'd copy and paste that for an email. So, look, what we're going to say for Susan is that she was competent. Grab that highlighting one. We're not going to give any negative feedback, and check on the culture of your RTO. Here at Evoke, we don't offer feedback unless there's a constructive need for feedback. We just go straight into the congratulations, you know, you've been successful type feedback when we issue the certificate. So see what the processes are with your RTO. And yeah, basically you can sign off on that with your signature. Now obviously being electronic, you just have to type it in and the date that you're attempting that today. Again, make sure you save your work because there's a lot of embedded documents in there. Saving as you go, open it all back up and double check everything is completed there.